TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem, and in today's top stories. Unidentified aircraft conduct heavy bombardments against Iranian and Syrian targets on Syria's side of the border with Iraq. After weeks of relative quiet, an exchange of fire broke out along Israel's border with Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo reveals that the terror group Al-Qaeda had apparently established a new home base in Iran. Heavy bombardments were reported overnight on the outskirts of Syria's Deir ez-Zor city, as well as multiple targets in the area of Al-Mayadin and Al-Bukamal, which are all situated on the country's eastern border region with Iraq. At approximately 1 a.m. last night, unidentified aircraft launched countless missiles toward 18 separate targets, which are operated by the Islamic Revolutionary Guards, including its SAA training camp on the southwestern outskirts of Deir ez-Zor city, where Shiite militants undergo training prior to deployment in Syria, alongside warehouses in a nearby compound. In tandem, warehouses and other installations, which are guarded by the Lebanese Hezbollah and Afghan Liwa Fatimiyun militias, were also struck near the town of Al-Mayadin and in a desert region surrounding the Syrian-Iraqi border city of Al-Bukamal. According to the London-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which cited local sources, at least 23 members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards, Syrian army, and Iranian proxy militias were killed in last night's bombardment. It further mentioned that significant material damage was caused to military infrastructure, and that for an extensive period of time after the bombardment, loud explosions were heard due to the explosion of ammunition in the targeted positions. It is also interesting to know that according to circulating reports, which TV7 could not immediately corroborate, a senior official of Syria's military intelligence branch, Ahmad al-Afar, was also killed in the attack. Meanwhile, the regime in Damascus pointed a blaming finger toward Israel. Nevertheless, the IDF spokesperson's unit did not confirm nor deny its involvement in response to TV7's request for comment. Turning to Israel's southern border with the Gaza Strip, where Islamist militants opened fire toward an IDF engineering vehicle, which operated adjacent to the security fence in the southern part of the Hamas-controlled enclave. While damage was caused to the vehicle, thankfully, no injuries were reported. In response to the cross-border fire, an IDF tank targeted a Hamas military post in the southern Gaza Strip. Shortly thereafter, an exchange of fire ensued. Armed militants opened fire toward another IDF vehicle in the vicinity, which consequently sustained minor damage. Subsequently, an IDF tank opened fire toward 2 additional observation posts belonging to the Islamist Hamas organization. And while all 3 observation posts were utterly destroyed, there were no immediate reports of any casualties. Hamas officials did not immediately respond to TV7's request for comment. Turning to the Israeli border with Syria, where alternate Premier and Defense Minister Benny Gantz reiterated Jerusalem's resolve to protect the borders of the Jewish state, toward the end of a working tour of the Golan Heights, during which Jerusalem's top defense official was briefed by senior military personnel at the IDF's 210th Division at the backdrop of a strategic point on the border with its northern neighbor. Gantz stressed that the Israeli defense establishment will continue to confront anyone who tries to challenge Israel's national security interests.
אנחנו ממשיכים לעמוד על המשמר בכל הגבולות שלנו. פעלנו ונמשיך לפעול כנגד כל מי שינסה לאתגר אותנו מקרוב או מרחוק. אנחנו לא יושבים או מחכים, אנחנו פועלים ביטחונית, מדינית וכלכלית. את האויבים שלנו לא מעניינים לא קורונה ולא בחירות. אני אעשה הכל שלישראל תהיה מנהיגות שעסוקה 24/7 בביטחון ישראל, בבריאות ובקידום התהליכים הנדרשים באזור.
It is interesting to know that after Israel's top defense official left the area, the IDF, during routine activity in the Mount Dov area of operations, apprehended a suspicious shepherd who, it said, intentionally crossed the United Nations recognized blue line from Lebanon into Israeli territory. It is important to explain that shepherds are systematically utilized by militias and terror groups in the region for the purpose of scouting sensitive locations under civilian guise. Therefore, the Lebanese suspect was transferred to relevant security forces for further questioning, and the IDF emphasized that it will not tolerate any attempt to violate Israeli territory. Turning to the Lebanese capital Beirut, where a statue honoring slain Iranian commander of the IRGC's Quds Force, Major General Qasem Soleimani, was erected on a highway named after the first supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, which leads to Beirut's international airport. More in this report by Emily Wither.
A hero to some and an enemy to others. A new statue in the Lebanese capital of the Iranian commander Qasem Soleimani is dividing opinion. It was erected on the anniversary of his killing by the US, and it sits at the entrance to Beirut's mainly Shiite southern suburbs. A drone strike killed Soleimani, head of an elite overseas unit of Iran's Revolutionary Guards, in January last year. Washington had accused him of masterminding attacks by Iranian-aligned militias on US forces in the region. To some Lebanese supporters, Soleimani is a source of great pride.
Martyr Qasem Soleimani means more to us than the statue, his sacrifices for the region and his impact all over. The defeat of Israelis and Americans in Iraq, it's all because of Haj Qasem Soleimani. So the least we can do is put a statue of Haj Qasem Soleimani. We give our souls for Haj Qasem.
But others took to social media to criticize what they said was a symbol of Iran's dominance under the hashtag #HandsOffLebanon. One user remarked that there wasn't a statue for the victims of the Beirut blast in August. Lebanon has for years been a stage for regional rivalry between Iran and its allies, including Syria on the one hand, and US-allied Sunni-led Gulf Arab states on the other.
Turning to the United States Capitol, where U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo revealed that the terror group Al-Qaeda had apparently established a new home base in Iran. Making the announcement at a news conference at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., the top American diplomat, who formerly served as CIA director, seemingly signaled the soon-to-be-inaugurated Biden administration of dangerous consequences unless his warnings are acknowledged and dealt with.
Al-Qaeda has a new home base. It is the Islamic Republic of Iran. As a result, bin Laden's wicked creation is poised to gain strength and capabilities. We ignore this Iran-Al-Qaeda nexus at our own peril. We need to acknowledge it, we must confront it, indeed we must defeat it.
Secretary Pompeo went on to draw an analogy between Afghanistan of the early 2000s and Iran of today, labeling the latter the key geographic hub for Al-Qaeda.
You now have the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism, the Islamic Republic of Iran, as the home base for Al-Qaeda. They are partners in terrorism, partners in hate. This axis poses a grave threat to the security of nations and to the American homeland itself. I would say Iran is indeed the new Afghanistan as the key geographic hub for Al-Qaeda. But it's actually worse. Unlike in Afghanistan, when Al-Qaeda was hiding in the mountains, Al-Qaeda today is operating underneath the hard shell of the Iranian regime's protection. As a result of this assistance, Al-Qaeda has centralized its leadership inside of Tehran. Ayman al-Zawahiri's deputies are there today, and frankly, they're living a normal Al-Qaeda life.
In parallel to this revelation, Secretary Pompeo made an announcement of a number of sanctions against Al-Qaeda leaders who are based in Iran and Iraq.
Today, we'll announce sanctions on Iran-based Al-Qaeda leaders Sultan Yusuf Hassan al-Arif and Mohammed Abateh. He is also known as Abdul Rahman al-Maghrebi. I'm also announcing designations of 3 leaders of Al-Qaeda Kurdish battalions, an Al-Qaeda-linked group that operates on the border between Iran and Iraq. And in a related action, I'm announcing a reward for up to $7 million under the State Department's Reward for Justice program for information that leads to the location or identification of al-Maghrebi. We want to bring him home to America for justice.
Thank you for watching us. For more of TV7's productions and reports, including a variety of programs and editorials, I encourage you to visit our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. And as part of TV7 Israel's prayer initiative, I would like to encourage you today to join myself and the team here in Jerusalem to lift up Canada once again in prayer for its salvation and peace, alongside prayers for our persecuted brethren around the world, and in addition to our ongoing prayers, of course, for the peace of Jerusalem, the salvation of Israel, and for all those who are impacted by the corona contagion and its numerous ramifications worldwide. Separately, I would like to once again thank all of you who partner with TV7 Israel. Your dedicated monthly support, both by means of prayer and finance, is of crucial importance for our ongoing operations. I'm Jonathan Hessen, wishing you an Erev Tov u'Mevorach, and we will see you again tomorrow at the same time.